On the morning of April 17, 2017, a caretaker was making his routine rounds on a parcel of private timberland deep in the forested hills of Benton County, Oregon. The area, located near the small, unincorporated community of Alsea, was remote and quiet, accessible only by a network of winding and often unpaved logging roads. It was a place where the silence was broken only by the sounds of nature, a place few people had reason to visit unless they worked there. As the caretaker drove along a desolate stretch of road, something out of place caught his eye. It was a flash of color against the earthy tones of the forest floor, partially obscured by damp leaves and fallen branches. He stopped his vehicle and got out to investigate, his curiosity mixed with a growing sense of unease. There, lying near the edge of the road, was the body of a young woman. She was lying on her back, her arms slightly outstretched. There was no purse, no wallet, no identification of any kind near her. The scene was unnervingly still, and the authorities were immediately called. When deputies from the Benton County Sheriff's Office arrived, they secured the area and began the grim task of processing a crime scene. They noted the single, devastating injury to the back of her head, an injury that told them this was not an accident. This was a homicide. The victim appeared to be in her late 20s. Her identity was a complete mystery. Investigators had very little to go on, just the body of an unknown woman left in an isolated location. They knew that their first and most critical task was to find out who she was. Without a name, they had no way to trace her life, her connections, or the path that had led her to this lonely end. The autopsy confirmed she had died from a shotgun wound. The medical examiner retrieved birdshot pellets from the wound, a specific type of ammunition that would become a crucial clue. For days, detectives worked tirelessly, checking missing persons reports from across the state and even neighboring states. But no report matched the description of their Jane Doe. The case was at a standstill before it had even truly begun. Meanwhile, halfway across the world in Moscow, Russia, the family of Anna Repkina was growing increasingly worried. Anna, a vibrant and ambitious 27-year-old, had always been in close contact with them. She was known for her responsible nature, her kindness, and her deep love for her family and friends. She was not the type of person to simply disappear without a word. Anna had built a good life for herself in Moscow. She was intelligent and hardworking, holding a stable job. However, like many young people, she dreamed of something more, of adventure and a different kind of life. She began exploring the world through online social networks, connecting with people from different cultures. It was on one of these platforms that she met a man from the United States. His name was William Hargrove, a 28-year-old living in Corvallis, Oregon. To Anna, he seemed charming and attentive. He presented himself as a man who was also looking for a serious, committed relationship. They began a long-distance romance, communicating daily through messages and video calls. Over many months, their connection deepened. Hargrove painted a picture of a wonderful life they could have together in Oregon. He spoke of marriage, of building a future, of the beauty of the Pacific Northwest. For Anna, who was feeling stagnant in her life in Russia, this was an irresistible promise. She fell in love with the man and the dream he was selling. She believed she had found her soulmate. Her friends and family in Russia were more skeptical. They were wary of this man she had never met in person, a man who lived a world away. They cautioned her about making such a life-altering decision based on an online relationship. But Anna was deeply in love and confident in her choice. She was convinced that her future was with William Hargrove in America. After months of planning and saving, Anna made the momentous decision to move. She quit her job, sold many of her belongings, and said emotional goodbyes to her loved ones. On March 1, 2017, she boarded a plane with a heart full of hope, bound for Portland, Oregon. She believed she was flying toward her happily ever after. She would never see her family or her home country again. When Anna landed, William Hargrove was there to pick her up. The dream for a moment seemed real. He drove her from the airport to his rented home in Corvallis, a small city about an hour and a half south of Portland. However, The reality of her new life was far more complicated and disturbing than anything Hargrove had led her to believe. The house was not just his. Hargrove was already in a long-term, established relationship with another woman, Michelle Chavez. Michelle lived in the house with him, and she was not merely a roommate. She was his girlfriend, and their relationship was common knowledge among their friends and acquaintances. Incredibly, Hargrove had convinced Michelle to allow Anna to move in with them. He had framed the situation as a temporary arrangement, telling Michelle that Anna was just a friend from Russia who needed a place to stay for a little while. At the same time, he had apparently told Anna a different story, minimizing his relationship with Michelle. He had created a toxic and untenable living situation built on a foundation of lies. Anna arrived to find herself in an implicit love triangle. The atmosphere in the house was thick with tension and jealousy. Michelle Chavez was understandably unhappy with the arrangement. She had been with Hargrove for a long time and saw Anna as an intruder who threatened her relationship. She had gone along with Hargrove's plan initially, but the daily reality of sharing her home and her partner with another woman quickly became unbearable. For Anna, the situation was a crushing disappointment. The man who had promised her marriage and an exclusive life together was actively involved with someone else. The dream she had traveled across the world for had immediately revealed itself to be a fraud. Still, she had given up everything to be there, and she tried to make the best of a terrible situation, likely hoping that Hargrove would eventually choose her. As the days turned into weeks, the tension in the house escalated. Michelle Chavez grew increasingly frustrated and angry. She felt betrayed by Hargrove, who was dividing his time and affection between the two women. He seemed to enjoy the attention and the power he held over both of them, making vague promises to each while refusing to make a definitive choice. Anna, meanwhile, became more and more isolated. She was in a foreign country where she knew no one but the man who was deceiving her. She did not speak much English, further cutting her off from the world around her. She spent much of her time in her room, communicating with friends and family back in Russia, trying to maintain a brave face but occasionally letting her fears slip through. On social media, she posted photos that projected an image of a happy new life, but her private messages told a different story. She confessed her anxieties to her mother, admitting that the situation was not what she had expected. In one particularly chilling post on Twitter, she made a darkly prescient observation about her new surroundings. She had tweeted, "So, I live on a dead end." By early April, just over a month after Anna's arrival, Michelle Chavez had reached her breaking point. She could no longer tolerate Hargrove's deception and the constant emotional turmoil. She confronted him and delivered an ultimatum. He had to choose. It was either her or Anna. If he did not get Anna out of the house and out of their lives, Michelle was going to leave him for good. This ultimatum set a deadline. William Hargrove was finally forced into a corner. He had to make a decision. For weeks, he had skillfully manipulated both women, but that game was now over. He had to choose which life he wanted, and which woman he was willing to discard. In the days that followed, Hargrove appeared to make his choice. He told Michelle what she wanted to hear, promising her that he would end things with Anna and send her back to Russia. He assured Michelle that he was choosing her. But his plan for getting rid of Anna was far more sinister than simply buying her a plane ticket home. On the evening of April 16, 2017, Hargrove told Anna he was taking her on a trip. He might have framed it as a romantic outing or a chance to see more of the Oregon scenery. Anna, perhaps believing he had finally chosen her or was trying to make amends, agreed to go with him. She packed a few things, unaware that she was leaving the house for the last time. Earlier that day, Hargrove had borrowed a 12-gauge shotgun from a friend named Kevin Thomas. He had claimed he needed it for a camping trip to ward off animals. This was another lie in his intricate web of deceit. The shotgun was not for protection. It was for a very specific and violent purpose. Hargrove and Anna left the house in Corvallis and started driving. Instead of heading toward a scenic destination, he drove south. Their journey took them away from the city and into the dark, winding roads of rural Benton County. Along the way, They made a stop that would later provide a crucial piece of evidence for investigators. At 9:53 p.m., Hargrove used his bank card to buy a meal at a Kentucky Fried Chicken restaurant in the town of Philomath. After the stop, he continued driving, heading deeper into the isolated wilderness. He eventually turned onto the same remote logging road where the caretaker would find Anna's body the next morning. It was a place where no one would see them, and no one would hear what was about to happen. There, in the darkness of the Oregon forest, William Hargrove walked Anna a short distance from his vehicle. Then, he raised the borrowed shotgun and shot her once in the back of the head. He left her body where it fell, taking her phone and any other possessions with him to erase any link between them. He drove away, leaving the woman who had crossed the world for him alone in the woods. He returned to his home in Corvallis, to Michelle, believing he had solved his problem and gotten away with murder. Back at the sheriff's office, the investigation into the identity of the Jane Doe had hit a wall. After several days with no leads, detectives decided to take a different approach. They released a photograph of the victim to the media, hoping someone would recognize her. This was a difficult decision, but a necessary one. They needed the public's help. The break they were looking for came from an unexpected source. An employee at a local Domino's Pizza saw the news report and recognized the woman. He remembered her from a distinctive interaction. The woman had come into the store a few weeks prior and, due to the language barrier, had used her phone to log into her Domino's account to show them her order history. The employee recalled that she had used a specific name for the account. He contacted the sheriff's office with this vital information. Investigators immediately subpoenaed the records from Domino's Pizza for the account associated with the name. The records provided them with a phone number and, more importantly, an email address. The name on the account was Anna Repkina. With a name, the investigation accelerated dramatically. A quick search of the name on social media brought up Anna's public profiles. The photos matched their victim perfectly. They now knew who she was, where she was from, and they could begin to piece together the last weeks of her life. Her social media trail quickly led them to the man she had moved to Oregon for, William Hargrove. On April 20th, 3 days after Anna's body was found, detectives from the Benton County Sheriff's Office arrived at William Hargrove's residence in Corvallis. When they knocked on the door, Hargrove answered. They asked him if he knew Anna Repkina. Hargrove's reaction was surprisingly calm and composed. He admitted that he knew Anna and that she had been staying with him. However, he then told a carefully constructed lie. He claimed that he and Anna had a falling out and that she had decided to leave. He told detectives that she had packed her bags and he had dropped her off somewhere in the Corvallis area a few days prior, and he had not seen or heard from her since. He suggested that she might have been heading to California to meet other friends. He acted concerned but ultimately detached, painting himself as someone who had simply provided temporary lodging to a friend. He gave the impression that her disappearance had nothing to do with him. The detectives noted his cool demeanor, which seemed unusual for someone whose recent houseguest had just vanished. While at the residence, the investigators also spoke with Michelle Chavez. At this early stage, they were trying to understand the dynamics of the household. Michelle confirmed that Anna had been living there and that there had been significant tension. She told them about the ultimatum she had given Hargrove, confirming that he was supposed to have ended things with Anna. Michelle's story made her a person of interest. She had a clear and powerful motive, jealousy. She had demanded that Hargrove get rid of Anna, and shortly thereafter, Anna had disappeared and was found murdered. From an investigative standpoint, Michelle was a primary suspect. It was plausible that her frustration had boiled over into violence, or that she had conspired with Hargrove. The investigators pressed Hargrove for more details about the day Anna supposedly left. He was vague and his story had inconsistencies. However, he had an alibi of sorts. He had been seen by others and could account for some of his time. He denied any involvement in her disappearance and stuck to his story that she had left on her own accord. For a brief period, the investigation focused heavily on the love triangle dynamic, with both Hargrove and Chavez under a cloud of suspicion. Detectives knew one or both of them were likely involved, but they lacked the physical evidence to connect either of them directly to the murder scene on the logging road. The next major breakthrough came on April 22nd, when a man named Kevin Thomas contacted the sheriff's office. Thomas was an acquaintance of William Hargrove. His conscience had been bothering him since he saw the news reports about the unidentified woman found dead from a shotgun blast. He told detectives that Hargrove had contacted him on April 14th, 2 days before the murder, asking to borrow his 12-gauge shotgun. Thomas explained that Hargrove had claimed he was going camping and wanted the gun for protection. Thomas had lent it to him. He then told detectives that Hargrove had returned the shotgun a few days later, on April 18th, the day after Anna's body was discovered. This testimony was explosive. It placed the likely murder weapon in William Hargrove's hands during the exact time frame of the murder. Armed with this new information, investigators obtained a search warrant for William Hargrove's vehicle, a distinctive blue Chevrolet Astro van. The search of the van yielded a wealth of forensic evidence that would systematically dismantle Hargrove's alibi and connect him directly to the crime. Tucked away inside the van, detectives found a crumpled paper bag from Kentucky Fried Chicken. Inside the bag was a receipt. The receipt was dated April 16, 2017, and time-stamped at 9:53 p.m. The location of the KFC was in Philomath, a town situated directly on the route from Corvallis toward the logging road in Alsea, where Anna's body was found. This receipt placed Hargrove and his van near the crime scene on the night of the murder. The search of the van uncovered even more. Detectives found 2 boxes of shotgun shells. They were Federal brand 12-gauge birdshot shells. Forensics experts were able to compare these unused shells with the pellets recovered from Anna's body during the autopsy. They were a perfect match. The ammunition in Hargrove's possession was identical to the ammunition used to kill Anna Repkina. The evidence against Hargrove was now overwhelming. He had the motive provided by Michelle's ultimatum. He had the weapon thanks to the testimony of Kevin Thomas. And now he had the physical evidence placing him near the scene of the crime with the correct type of ammunition on the night of the murder. His lies were falling apart. Despite the mountain of evidence pointing to Hargrove, detectives still needed to understand the complete picture, and Michelle Chavez remained a key figure. They brought her in for another, more intensive interview. They confronted her with the evidence they had gathered against Hargrove. They needed to know what she knew. This time, Michelle's story changed. The weight of the situation, and perhaps the realization that she was also a victim of Hargrove's manipulation, led her to tell the full and unvarnished truth. She was no longer a red herring or a potential co-conspirator. She was about to become the prosecution's star witness. Michelle told investigators that on the night of April 16th, William Hargrove had returned home very late. He was acting strangely. She confronted him, asking him if he had finally dealt with the Anna situation as he had promised. It was then that Hargrove made a chilling confession. According to Michelle, Hargrove looked her in the eyes and told her what he had done. He admitted that he had taken Anna out to the woods and had shot her. He told her that he had done it for them, so that they could be together without Anna standing in their way. He had confessed to the murder to the very person whose ultimatum had set the tragic events in motion. Michelle's testimony provided the final, irrefutable piece of the puzzle. It was a direct confession from the killer, relayed through a credible witness. She explained that she had been terrified and had not known what to do. Her initial statements to police had been clouded by fear and a misguided sense of loyalty to the man she had loved. But faced with the reality of his crime, she chose to tell the truth. On April 24, 2017, exactly 1 week after Anna Repkina's body was discovered, William Hargrove was arrested and charged with her murder. He was taken into custody without incident, his calm facade finally broken. The complex web of lies he had woven had completely unraveled. The case against him was exceptionally strong. The prosecution, led by the Benton County District Attorney's Office, had a clear motive, a murder weapon linked directly to the defendant, forensic evidence from his vehicle that placed him at the scene, and a detailed confession relayed by his other girlfriend. William Hargrove's trial began in late 2019. The prosecution meticulously laid out the timeline of events for the jury. They started with Anna's hopeful arrival in the United States, detailed the toxic love triangle Hargrove had created, explained the pressure of Michelle's ultimatum, and presented the damning evidence of the crime itself. Kevin Thomas testified about lending Hargrove the shotgun. Forensic experts testified about the KFC receipt and the matching shotgun shells found in the van. Anna's friends and family provided emotional testimony, sharing messages she had sent them expressing her fear and confusion in her final weeks. They painted a heartbreaking picture of a young woman trapped in a situation she did not understand, a world away from anyone who could help her. The centerpiece of the trial was the testimony of Michelle Chavez. On the witness stand, she recounted the entire story for the jury. She spoke of her relationship with Hargrove, the arrival of Anna, the ultimatum she gave, and finally, Hargrove's horrifying confession on the night of the murder. Her testimony was powerful and credible, leaving little doubt in the courtroom about Hargrove's guilt. Hargrove's defense team attempted to create reasonable doubt. They tried to portray Michelle Chavez as an unreliable witness, suggesting she had a motive to lie and frame Hargrove. They argued that the evidence was circumstantial and that no one had actually seen Hargrove commit the crime. However, they could not explain away the shotgun, the shells, or the KFC receipt. Throughout the trial, William Hargrove showed little emotion. He sat silently at the defense table, listening to the testimony that detailed his cold and calculated actions. He maintained his innocence, but his defense was unable to poke any significant holes in the prosecution's case. After a 2-week trial, the jury took only a few hours to reach a verdict. On November 4, 2019, William Hargrove was found guilty of the murder of Anna Repkina. The verdict brought a sense of relief and justice to the courtroom, though it could do nothing to undo the tragedy. At his sentencing hearing, the judge condemned Hargrove's actions, calling the murder a cold-blooded, execution-style crime. Hargrove was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 25 years. He was also sentenced to an additional 10 years for unlawful use of a weapon, to be served consecutively. Anna Repkina's mother, Yelena, submitted a statement that was read to the court. She spoke of her daughter's bright spirit, her kindness, and her dreams for the future. She described the unbearable pain of losing her only child in such a brutal and senseless way, and the horror of knowing her daughter died alone in a foreign land at the hands of a man she had trusted. The murder of Anna Repkina was a profound tragedy born from selfishness and deceit. Anna had traveled across the globe in search of love and a new beginning, only to be met with betrayal and violence. She was the victim of a man who saw her not as a person, but as an obstacle to be removed. William Hargrove's inability to be honest and his refusal to face the consequences of his own choices led him to commit the ultimate act of cruelty. He manipulated 2 women, playing with their emotions and their lives, until his web of lies became too complicated to maintain. Instead of choosing honesty, he chose murder. Michelle Chavez, who was also manipulated by Hargrove, was left to rebuild her life with the traumatic knowledge of what he had done. Her ultimatum was the catalyst, but the responsibility for the crime rested solely with Hargrove. Her testimony was crucial in ensuring he was held accountable for his actions. The investigation by the Benton County Sheriff's Office was a testament to methodical police work. From the initial discovery of an unknown victim, they followed a trail of digital and physical clues: a pizza account, a borrowed shotgun, a fast food receipt, that led them directly to the killer. Their diligence ensured that Anna Repkina did not remain a Jane Doe and that her murderer did not escape justice. In the end, the story of Anna Repkina is a heartbreaking cautionary tale about the dangers of online relationships and the darkness that can hide behind a charming facade. It is the story of a life full of promise, cut short by a cold and calculated act of violence. Anna was buried in her hometown of Moscow, finally at rest after her tragic journey. Her family and friends were left to grieve a loss that could never be repaired, forever haunted by the question of what might have been.